JL Audio's RD amplifier series has long been known for its sleek yet powerful design, with the existing lineup featuring a 400-watt 4-channel amplifier, a 900-watt 5-channel full system amplifier, and 3 different options for monoblock subwoofer amplifiers coming in at 500 watts, 1000 watts, and 1500 watts. But today I'm excited to show you guys not one, but 2 brand new models that are being added to the line: the RD800/6 and the RD900/5 Plus. At first glance, you might think, okay, so just a 6-channel and a 5-channel. But there are actually some really cool new features here that we haven't seen in this lineup before. In this video, we're going to take a closer look at those features, and we're also going to do a full overview of all the functionality and design built into the RD series of amplifiers. A big thanks to Garmin for sponsoring this video and sending over these amplifiers so that we can take a closer look. A quick disclaimer, this is an early production model, so the final version may be slightly different, including the packaging here, but you can also expect to get a printed manual inside. In my case, we'll be referring to the PDF version. Wait a minute, what's this in the orange here? Staggered power? We'll talk about that in a little bit. So let's open this up and take a closer look at the RD800/6. Along with the amplifier inside, we also get an Allen key and one of the JL Audio emblems. It's nice that they include this emblem separately because we can choose its orientation depending on our installation. So taking a quick look at the body of this RD amplifier, you can see that all the connections that we need to make are on one side, and then all of the settings that we need to adjust to tune this amplifier are here on top. To access these settings, we'll take off these 2 fasteners here. And a couple of nice design features here. On the back of this cover plate, this has a rubber gasket type material that prevents dust from getting inside the amplifier here. And also each of these 2 screws is retained, so we don't have to worry about them falling out. So the RD series of amplifiers is very installation friendly, with all the connections being on one side and all of our settings being here on top. When we opened up the amplifier, we did get only this one Allen key, and that's another nice installation and design feature. This one Allen key can be used for all of the different connections that we need to make, from the power connections to the remote connection to all of the speaker wire connections. Here at the center of the amplifier is an LED light strip, and this glows blue under normal operation, but also acts as a diagnostic light, which will turn red for 3 seconds during power up and then blue. But if it is lit as a steady red or an alternating red-blue, it indicates that there is an issue with the amplifier as described in the manual. So nice to have those diagnostic features there. Some additional features here that aren't immediately obvious but do help these amplifiers sound amazing are the NextD switching technology, which allows for exceptional audio fidelity while maintaining efficiency and allowing for a compact design. There's also the differential balanced inputs, which combat induced cable noise, helping you achieve a noise-free system. For the installation process, I recommend checking out the manual, but you're going to see that the RD series of amplifiers has 4 mounting points in order to secure the amplifier. In terms of connections, we need to make the 12-volt constant connection, which is going to go to the vehicle's battery. Next, we have the ground wire connection. Finally, the remote turn-on lead, but when it comes to this connection, we actually have a few different options. If you take a look at this switch here, you can see those 3 different options for the turn-on mode. We have remote, offset, and signal. Remote is the most common mode. If you have a switched 12-volt lead that comes on with the audio system in the vehicle, I always recommend this first. But some vehicles don't have this readily available, which leads to the other options. Offset is used if you're feeding this amplifier signal from the speaker level signal of the vehicle. In layman's terms, if you have the factory speaker wires from the factory speakers connected to send signal in, which by the way you can do with this style of adapter here. The other option is signal, which detects a full range signal on the inputs rather than a DC offset, but again, this would be if you're feeding signal from a factory source unit. Now, if you're using an aftermarket head unit in your vehicle, like I have here as part of my test bench, odds are that you're going to have a switched 12-volt remote out, which again, in that case, you're going to go back to that original remote setting. Now, for our inputs to get audio signal into our amplifier, as noted, we could use a high-level signal, in which case we'd want to tell the amplifier that and have the input voltage setting over to the right. But we can also obviously use a low level or line level input, which is common with the signal out of an aftermarket head unit or DSP. The inputs are in fact rated from 200 millivolts up to 8 volts, so a lot of flexibility here for integrating with a factory system. The next switch that makes this amplifier really versatile is the input mode switch, and let's start with talking about the 2-channel mode. So let's unplug these two here. In 2-channel mode, whatever signal is coming in on channel 1 will of course be sent to channel 1, but also 3 and 5. The same goes for channel 2, that will be sent to channel 2, but also 4 and 6. Now what about 4-channel mode here? In 4-channel mode, 1, 2, and 3, and 4 each go out to their corresponding channel, but for 5, that's going to be the sum of 1 and 3, and for channel 6, that's going to be the sum of channels 2 and 4. An example here would be, let's say we have front left and right on channels 1 and 2, rear left and right on channels 3 and 4, but we want to use the channels 5 and 6 for powering something that's non-fading, like a subwoofer. We could always have that summing even if we are faded all the way to the front or rear using these output channels. On 6-channel input mode, we would have a signal going into all 6 of these inputs, which are routed directly to each of their corresponding outputs. An example here would be having a DSP, which is a digital signal processor upstream of this amplifier controlling 6 channels of signal. The final connection we need to make on the RD800/6 are for the speaker wires themselves, and note that you can bridge channel pairs if needed. When bridging, you want to make sure that you do not have a speaker impedance below 4 ohms, and when connecting to individual channels, you do not want to go below 2 ohms. Now you might have noticed earlier when we opened up the box, something unique here. Staggered power, and that's what applies to channels 5 and 6. As it stands currently in the RD lineup, this is a feature that is unique to the 800/6, and it's going to become apparent when you take a look at the power ratings here. You can see that channels 1, 2, 3, and 4 are rated at 100 watts at 2 ohms or 75 watts at 4 ohms. But check this out, channels 5 and 6, 200 watts at 2 ohms or 150 watts at 4 ohms. This allows for a system design where you send significantly more power to the drivers on channels 5 and 6. An example being a 3-way component system where you have powerful woofers on 5 and 6. That added power will help you achieve a ton of mid-bass. Now getting back to our settings here, we have a ton of different options for each bank of speakers. First off, for each bank, there's the input type selection switch, and that can be either stereo or mono, and that's what's going to control whether or not we get the signal from the left and right input to each of these channels, or if we get it from the left input only, which is then copied over to the other channel. Another setting here is for the filter mode, and this changes slightly on each bank of speakers. Let's first talk about channels 1 and 2, which in a 3-way active setup, you would typically be using these for your high range frequency drivers, something like your tweeters. First of all of these can be turned off, which means you would control your crossovers upstream of the amplifier in either your aftermarket head unit or a DSP. If you do need to control your crossovers on the amplifier, you want to make sure that those are not in the off setting. On channels 1 and 2, this switch is going to give us a ×1 or a ×10 option, and that corresponds to the setting here on our filter frequency. The filter here on channels 1 and 2 is a high pass filter, which means it allows frequencies above the set point to pass to the speakers. So if we are set at ×10, right now at that 50 value, that's going to be 50 × 10, which is 500. That's a 500 hertz setting, or we can go all the way up to 500 × 10, which would be 5,000. So odds are, if you're using this in an active configuration to power a tweeter, you're going to be using that ×10 setting. If you were using this to power, say, a set of coaxial speakers, or if you were powering a component set with the passive crossover inline, you may want to use the ×1 setting, which allows us to use from 500 hertz down to 50. Now the next 2 sets of channels for 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 can also be set as a high pass filter by going all the way over in the filter mode switch there. And again, in this case, we're going to see 50 up to 500 hertz on each for that high pass filter setting. Where this amplifier gets super unique though is if we choose the band pass option for these filter modes. Again, here I'll use the example of an active 3-way set where we have tweeters, mid-range, and woofers. And let's say that we do want this to be a tweeter with the high frequency setting. Let's say in this case that we want to go about 2000 hertz on up for the tweeter, so we have the ×10 setting there. Now with our switch on channels 3 and 4 being set at the bandpass setting, what that means is this dial here controls our low pass filter value for channels 3 and 4. In other words, since this is currently at 2000 hertz, we're going to be playing everything below 2000 hertz through channels 3 and 4, and then this dial here controls the high pass filter, again for channels 3 and 4, which in this case I've set to 200 hertz. So we have everything playing on channels 3 and 4 between 200 hertz up to 2000 hertz. This functionality continues down the line if we have channels 5 and 6 set to bandpass. Now our low pass filter setting for this bank of channels is going to be that 200 hertz, and then this is going to be our high pass filter setting. And let's turn that up a little bit. Let's say that we have a subwoofer elsewhere in the system and a subwoofer amplifier separate. So we're going to be playing everything above 80 hertz up to 200 hertz on this set of channels. This bandpass functionality is definitely nice to have built into the amplifier, and keep this in mind when we go to talk about the new RD900/5 Plus, as this has some similar crossover capabilities. A quick side note, all of these filters are 12 dB per octave slope, and don't forget that if we want, we can always turn all of them off and again control them elsewhere in the system. Another super important setting for each bank of channels is the input sensitivity, commonly referred to as the gain. A unique aspect of the RD series of amplifiers is they have this associated light. This light allows us to correctly set the input sensitivity of our amplifier by following the process outlined in the manual. This ensures that we do the initial setup of our amplifier correctly in order to avoid clipping the output signal. This way we can get as much clean performance out of this amplifier as possible. Now that we know all the details on the brand new RD800/6 that's been added to the line, what about the RD900/5 Plus that is also new? So right above this here, I have the RD900/5, a long-time legendary 5-channel amplifier. The Plus model here expands upon the existing functionality with the addition of that 3-way crossover capability. So now at the amplifier itself, you could set up a 2-way active component set where you could have the tweeters high passed on channels 1 and 2, a set of 6.5-inch component woofers band passed with a high and low pass filter, and a low pass filter on the subwoofer. Also worth noting, the Plus model here also gives us the ability to completely turn off those filters so that we can control them upstream of the amp. In terms of system design, I know that I mentioned earlier that the new 6-channel amplifier could technically power subwoofers off channels 5 and 6 with that staggered power, but I would personally recommend that for more of a system design where you want to power your mid-bass drivers with those channels. If you are looking to power a subwoofer, I think that the RD900/5 Plus is a great solution, as the subwoofer channel on this is mono, which you're going to be doing for subwoofers likely anyhow, and it's rated at 225 watts times 1 at 4 ohms, or 500 watts times 1 at 2 ohms. Another feature on the 900/5 Plus that makes it great for this being a subwoofer channel is this port right here for the JL Audio RBC-1, which is a remote level control that allows us to control the level of the subwoofer independently. Otherwise, between these two amplifiers here, many of these same features that we've covered throughout this video. Overall, these new RD amplifier models are a solid addition to the existing lineup. I personally have an RD1500/1 that I use daily to power my 3 13TW5s, and it sounds so good. In my experience, the amplifier runs nice and cool, is quite dynamic and noise-free, and just a quality, reliable amplifier. To learn more about the JL Audio RD lineup of amplifiers, be sure to check out the links down in the video description. And again, a special thanks to Garmin for sponsoring this video so that we can take a closer look. And thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching.